Hi, and welcome back to Like Maria. Today we're going to be talking about Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. When you've finished this presentation, you should be able to talk about Waiting for Godot just like Maria. I'm going to focus today on looking at the way the drama works and different parts of the text illustrating this. For some of you, you'll know this as AO2, Assessment Objective 2, on your exam specification. But for others who are doing different exam boards, this will just be mainly about looking at the techniques of drama. So I'm going to start off today looking at the use of props. And props form a big part in Waiting for Godot, especially as there are so few of them and they are really brought to the fore when they are used. So one scene that you'll know very well is the carrot scene. It's on page 13 of the Faber book. And Estragon says, "I'll never forget this carrot." His mouth is often full of carrot and he's asking, "We're not tied?" And I would suggest that this shows his childish nature and his priorities in life, that he's not so much concerned with what's happening generally. He's concerned foremost, the carrot is full of his mouth, full in his mouth when he asks the question vacuously here. He's not foremost interested in the bigger picture, although he does of course talk about being tied or not, but his main focus is on the carrot. And here I suggest there is a moment of humour for us. The carrot's presence here does also prompt philosophical discussion between the characters, and Beckett gets the chance to ponder their situation in their references to the carrot. Estragon, "The more you eat, the worse it gets." Vladimir, "I get used to the muck as I go along." So here we have two opposing views which can be taken as metaphors for their situation in life. And Estragon saying that it is definitely a downward curve here, a pessimistic view, and Vladimir saying that he's kind of adjusting to the existence as he goes along and he doesn't find things too bad. This is then developed into a discussion of whether or not it is worth struggling or wriggling, and debate about whether one is what one is. The essential doesn't change. Can one change one's existence, one's essence perhaps, or is one given something at birth? And this of course relates to the philosophy of the mid-20th century, looking at people like Sartre, who are exploring what existence means and whether or not we have free will to develop and change our existence. So here you can see quite a frugal prop, the carrot, which is a root vegetable and a humble vegetable, being used to focus on really quite sophisticated topics that Beckett is introducing here. Now, of course, there are many other props in the play, and I would suggest that you go back through your text and look at these. I would suggest looking at the tree, the use of various hats, the boots, and also some of the things such as the whip and the bag that Lucky is involved with. So that's somewhere you can look at outside of what is actually said in the dialogue. Another aspect of the drama I would suggest, and this is really looking at the bigger picture and trying to get a sense of sitting in the audience rather than reading the play on the page, is the disruption to the normal circumstances. So normally we have Estragon and Vladimir bantering and this fast-paced dialogue, or trying to do things to fill silence. From time to time something comes in to disrupt this. First Major disruption is on page 14, a terrible cry. The carrots dropped, put aside, they huddle, they're cringing, and then there is a visual arrival with the crack of the whip, and Pozzo bursts onto the stage in all his largeness and all his volume and all his dominance. And here I would suggest that we are being introduced firstly to the tension that is surrounding this disruption by hearing off stage a terrible cry. And then, of course, we are experiencing what these two characters experience when Pozzo intrudes on their existence. So this kind of disruption to the normal status quo of Estragon and Vladimir's existence is really quite dramatic in a play that some people say doesn't have any action. This is in contrast, as I've said, to the normal dialogue, and here I want to introduce this Greek terminology, sticomythia. Now, sticomythia is the quick alternation of lines of dialogue. We usually meet it in Shakespeare, where it's the swapping to and forth of lines of iambic pentameter specifically. But here I think we can use this term to suggest that these characters are cooperating nicely in their dialogue. And so this is an element of how we can really look closely at the way Beckett writes his dialogue to explore the relationship between the characters. So we might take, for example, charming evening we're having on page 27. And we might work up a paragraph something like this. The natural cooperation of the double act is illustrated by many instances of seamless sticomythia, such as the discussion about the charming evening initiated by Vladimir. The harmony in the dialogue here also serves to separate the pair from Pozzo and Lucky and remind the audience that they are observing the newcomers just as we are watching them. So you can see here how the creation of the dialogue and the way it's manoeuvred between the characters shows us about how they cooperate, how they are seamlessly working together, and also this reference to Pozzo and Lucky, this dramatic technique of comparing one double act with another double act is really very important and helps us illuminate both sets of characters. So there again you can see how the dialogue works to help us develop character, and I would suggest that you go back and look for other examples of this sticomythia here, just to look at how the characters work together. Sometimes they're abusing each other, sometimes they're working well with each other. We also have moments in this play where we have what we call breaking the fourth wall. Now, this is where a character steps out of the drama and steps into the audience space, not literally, but figuratively, and he tells the audience something. It's not physically moving into the audience, but he's talking to the audience. And here, on page 52, we have Vladimir saying, referring to Estragon in the third person, saying, he's forgotten everything. And this is a very important moment, and you need to go through the play and track where this happens. Because again, it disrupts the normal proceedings of the play. And here I suggest that it helps us recognise Vladimir's frustration. His utterance is addressed to the audience rather than Estragon. By allowing Vladimir to break the fourth wall, Beckett removes the audience from the imaginary world of the play and alienates us further from the characters. We could, however, say that here Vladimir attempts to align himself with the usually superior position of the audience. So we need to think about what's going on with the character there and how the audience is reacting. I say usually superior. I'm not sure in this play that we are supposed to place ourselves in a superior position. Another aspect of the dialogue in particular is looking at repetition and patterning. And I'm going to use one example here, this idea of the resuming. So on page 1, Estragon tries again to put his boot on. Vladimir talks about how he resumed the struggle. The beginning of Act 2, we have Vladimir with the song stopping and starting again and resuming. In the middle of Lucky's speech, we have him announcing, I resume, I resume. And we have resuming different activities. In particular, one that I would look at is when the characters try to hang themselves. They resume that again. So all of these repetitions, in this case all themed about resuming, are patterned in different ways in the play, in physical actions and in the dialogue, and there you can see in the song, in that monologue song of Vladimir. So we can say that Beckett highlights this theme of resuming the struggle, of struggling with something and persisting by these various means, these various different dramatic techniques. So there again, look through the play and see what else is repeated and see if you can work up some examples there. Looking a little bit more closely about physical actions, this is really important in the play, and I think especially in Act 2 actually. So there are moments when we see the characters working well together. Let's just do the tree for the balance, and they are both doing that. Or they are doing their exercises together, and the dialogue and the exercises match in with each other. We see times in the play where they both stagger and fall. We see Pozzo and Lucky's entrance and exit, and the running jump where Pozzo has to have preparation and even make a drama out of his exit. And then we see Lucky falling and bringing down Pozzo, and later on Vladimir falls and Estragon goes and brings down, Estragon is brought down as well. So the physicality on the play is very important, and I would suggest adds to its humour quite often. So go back through the play again and look at moments where the physical actions of the characters on stage are important, and think about how you might use those in your essay. So I've spoken quite a lot about the dialogue in this play, and of course that's very important. I think too important are moments of monologue, and these are very significant. Obviously we get Lucky's monologue, the first big moment in the play where we leave the dialogue and our interest is sustained in one character. And I will do a separate PowerPoint about that. The other moments in the play that I think are very important, and I will look at again in different presentations, are when both Vladimir and Pozzo in Act 2 do also have centre stage. In particular, the one on page 71, where Vladimir gives this Hamlet-esque discussion of whether to act or not, and he starts off, let us, suggesting that we should go and help other people in the world, and this is where Pozzo and Lucky have fallen down. And I would suggest that this is quite like Hamlet's to be or not to be speech, in that he's weighing up the pros and cons here and talking about existence and what are we doing here, that is the question. Vladimir, being the more philosophical of the pair, quite often goes into these philosophical ruminations. He weighs up pros and cons. He uses the example of the tiger who helps his kin, and he alludes to Godot, waiting for Godot to come, or night to fall. And I would say in this moment, Vladimir is very much using a Christian semantic field and maybe coming across rather like St. Paul in this kind of Pauline tone where he gives a sermon. But of course, the end result of this monologue here is that there is no action. So there is this monologue that focuses on this debate about what to do and the debate about taking action and perhaps shaping our own existences. Again, here referencing to existential philosophy, but no action is taken. So important to look at that monologue in detail, and later on Pozzo's monologue about giving birth astride the stage, and a little later still Vladimir's ruminations on that topic, and where he's talking in monologue about the actions of the previous day. The last thing I want to talk about is slapstick farce and the confusing moments of the play. And this play is called A Tragicomedy by Beckett himself. And I think it's very important to try and recognise the moments of comedy in this play. And I'm going to look at the section on page 74 where they all end up on the ground, fallen over. And I think, as well as seeing this as a kind of the sort of hellish place where they have arrived at, and linking it perhaps to the fall of man and the fall of humanity, we can see this as quite a hilarious moment in the play, which has many things in common with the silent film of the early part of the 20th century. So people like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, and indeed Laurel and Hardy, who we know Beckett was a great fan of, this scene where one falls and brings down the other, and one goes to help and the other one has the misfortune of falling over again, and there is great confusion here, is really quite funny. Estragon extorts a promise from Vladimir to take him to the Pyrenees. There is talk of who farted. You can imagine them waving away the fart. Estragon falls over. There is confusion. Who are you? We are men. Sweet Mother Earth. So the kind of uncertainty there and the confusion, and you can imagine them kind of almost cartoon characters in this moment. And then there is the bawdiness as well, the suggestion to kick him in the crotch, and again the uncertainty. Are you sure his name is Pozzo? So all of this here I would suggest to you is really quite amusing, and you need to go back through the play and have a look for these moments of confusion and farce, to see that Beckett isn't, this isn't always grim play. Yes, the message does come across as being quite bleak, but there are moments when, as an audience, we are watching and we can't resist to laugh, certainly in some productions. And I think the physicality and the feeling that we want to laugh here adds to this absurd nature of the situation being given to us, and the fact that humanity is often prepared to laugh at humanity and its own existence. So I hope those ideas have given you a slightly different way into the play, perhaps, and brought it off the page and helped you try to look at the drama. So as I said, I will be doing some more presentations on this very soon, and I hope you have understood the drama just like Maria.